All right, everybody. I'm very excited to have the biggest guest I've ever had on Your New Dad. He's one of the most incredible pop stars that I've ever met in my life. He's dropping a new album. His name's Rick Springfield. It's Joel Tudor. Joel Tudor, one of the greatest surfers of all time. He's absolutely incredible. I'm a huge fan, but I have so many questions for him. I hope, Joel, the Taylor Swift and the Lady Gaga, is this permissible for you?
That's great. Who's the one in the middle? I don't have my glasses.
Who is the one in the middle? In the booth. Who's in the middle right there? All right, he's coming out.
Who?
Harry Styles. Well, Harry Styles, I apologize for your bandmate who just jumped out of a window or was possibly pushed. One Direction fans, I know there's a lot of them out there. I'm sorry. So Joel Tudor, if you don't know who he is, he's one of the most influential surfers, in my opinion, of the last 35 years. He was gracious enough to give him his time. I start every guest out with a gift. So I have something for you, Joel. This took me 6 months to make. I handcrafted it from resin from the United States of America. This is not made with slave labor. And my hope is that it's passed on to Judah and Tosh, and perhaps one day they'll say, this is Papa. It is you in the barrel at Pipe in 2006. There you go. I hope you enjoy.
How cool. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Go ahead and take a look-see. Put those specs on.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty good. It's accurate, too. Like, same depiction.
Absolutely. Look through the little look through there you go. That's you.
Oh, wow, that's actually cool. And I've got big trunks on, like the 90s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool.
Very good. Now, I have a question for you. First of all, you pulled up in a kitted out Sprinter van with a stand-up paddleboard on top, an electric bike on the side. I truly don't know you. I mean, what's up with that?
Yeah. Man, I just caved in. My kids made it, so normal to have one, so I had to get what they wanted.
That's awesome. So we're going to jump right into the questions. First of all, your oldest boy, Tosh. Word on the street is he had a bit of an addiction to watching people play video games on YouTube for a long time. How did Tosh get the help he needed, and was there an intervention?
In the beginning, he did. He watched a lot of YouTube stuff. It was pretty hard to get him to surf. He was not the easiest. I wasn't a super coach, when you see the parents that have got the kid and they got the camera and they're filming and
I'm a fan of Dino and Dino. Let's just set the record straight. I'm not saying that's this world. It's all gossipy. That's what this world is. Surfers, we don't know the true story. That's why we're here. Dino, I love you. Represent.
I'm for sure take responsibility of giving him shit for stuff. You know what I mean? I was the typical parent. It was wow, why'd you miss that wave? I did that a lot. You should have gone on that one. You can't help it, right? You're trying to, especially in my situation, I've kind of got a little bit of knowledge in the surf stuff. So I would do my best to kind of hammer him with the, listening, but your kids never want to listen to what you say. It wasn't an easy sell to get him to get into surfing. I don't think until he was really 14, and it's the same thing with Judo. Around 14, he started to figure it out, right? And then after that, he had a ton of uncles and different friends that he looked up, not so much me.
Yeah.
It's people where he took the information from.
Yeah.
And he's done great. You can only super coach your kids so far. That's just my opinion. In my case, I probably was overbearing with the pushing just because I had so much knowledge on it. It maybe backfired a little bit, to where they caught on a little later. But you also want them to have fun in the beginning.
Absolutely.
Right? You kind of don't want to you fuck that heat up. I did that to him too. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
For sure. But he learned early that getting tubed was the best part of surfing.
Yeah, 4 seconds in 31 years I've been tubed.
Yeah.
But you got a little more time than me.
No, I don't care if it's hard. If you come close, if it's a barrel dodge, if you're in that moment where you can kind of see the lip line coming over, it's
that counts.
It counts.
You heard it. Yeah, you heard it. I love it.
Not everybody can get completely barreled, right? But just the riding in the pocket and hearing the sound and all the things, it'll blow. That's why you see people claim when they're not in it.
Absolutely.
And they come out and you're like, wow, that guy claim it, because it's just, you got to understand, even if you're close but not completely there, it's a feeling, right?
Absolutely. And I've met Tosh, and he could not have been a nicer human. And I was like, somebody that would be you And I'm assuming your father, mom, great kid, and you did a great job with them. And I think that says a lot about a human when you meet their kids. I think it does.
He also grew up in environments of spots where I know people are against localism, but he grew up in kind of like places where it was pretty prevalent, and it kind of teaches you order and balance and how to pay your dues and where your place is in line and not jumping the line and the consequences for if you do and all that kind of stuff. So it really gave him the tools to travel the world, to go to all these kind of grumpy surf spots and be able to get waves.
And it's no joke. Like I've heard you mention, when you travel, even to Mexico, you travel overseas, it's a different arena with a completely different set of rules. And like you said, a cousin can be in the cartel. Somebody knows the law enforcement. Like you are a guest. What advice would you give to like people that are traveling?
We figured out, when I just went to Indo, I hadn't been there in 30 years. I hadn't been to Bali. I just recently went, and then I hadn't been back to Desert Point in about 12 years. Obviously it's changed, the internet and the cell phones and influencers and social media and stuff has kind of really put a flex on information for people to get there, where before it was kind of word of mouth. You kind of had to know somebody, you know what I mean? Someone had to kind of share it with you. Now it's just, everyone's got a GoPro and they're trying to get followers. So they give away the info. It's 10 times more crowded. But at the end of the day, the locals still run the roost, no matter what. And you'll figure it out when you catch a good one. You're like, who's this guy in front of me? You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, I can't say a word. I got to shut up.
Right.
And it's good. It keeps a balance. Luckily, like I said, Tosh grew up surfing some of these really grumpy spots that I grew up surfing. And even at those grumpy spots for me, I can't jump the line. You know what I mean? I have to kind of like, I gotta wait until one of the other grumpy guys gets one.
And do you look at you look at the hierarchy? You're saying that guy's older, he's been here longer.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Still to this day.
I also, I grew up in a carpenter family. Every one of my relatives, every single one. I don't have anybody that doesn't work in labor, right? Mm-hmm. I used to text my brother when the waves would be good at Blacks, and I'd be like, man, it's really good, get down here. And then in the evenings, I would always kind of notice, like by sundown, there'd be someone just burning me. You know what I mean? Some big burly guy that was just like stuffing me over and over again. And I'd finally like, what the fuck, man? And I'd be like, oh yeah? All those texts you sent your brother? Well, I pour concrete for him. You know what I mean? And he was like, you're going to ride behind me for the rest of the day. And I'm like, oh, fair enough. I can't say much. He's like, yeah, every one of us saw those texts of you telling him how good it was when we were all working. And like, you've been here all day? End of the line.
So you grew up, you were in the spotlight at such a young age. Were you cognizant of that with your sons? Like going like, when is it too soon to put them out there, especially in this new weird world where like you can't write a letter to surfer now. That's probably what you used to get. I don't like Tudor. Yeah. Fuck that guy. Like, but now it's, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, they can go directly after you.
Were you thinking in your head, like, if these kids fall in love with surfing, let's do it the right way?
They've grown up with the privilege of not having to deal with what I dealt with through the 1980s. Right. Surfing was pretty close-minded and people were rough. It was a tough environment. Being the only longboard kid that had ever made any money, you became a target.
For sure.
And it wasn't that I was making a ton. Even if you're making just a little bit, it's enough to get people upset, right? Sure. Especially when it's with something that's not deemed cool. And longboarding was really uncool. Maybe not for the Herbie generation and those guys that had made their way through the 60s and lasted into the 80s and the 90s. But for someone that like was an upstart in my age and you wanted to pick this old man activity, which is just kind of like considered a handicap right off the start. Yeah, I was a target for sure. It's why I'm tough. It's why I learned to fight,
Speaking of that, what's coming next, the question I'm going to ask, because it comes up all the time with I talk surfing with friends. That's all we do. We talk about surfing. And throughout the years, the story has morphed out in the public.
Oh, I'll tell you the story right now.
Please, but wait. I heard a new one today. I got new questions on Instagram saying you learned to here. No, I'm not going to go into it. No. I've heard so many different stories. So please set the record straight. Why did you start training jiu-jitsu?
Okay, so for the record, my ex-wife took me for the first time. Tosh's mom is from Maui. I had a soft spot for those Hawaiian girls.
There
right?
You go.
I arrived on the North Shore when I was 14. My parents didn't pay my way there. I actually won a surfboard in a raffle at the Malibu contest. and I think I was 13, and I won a Scott Anderson. And once I got it, I took it to the Longboard Grotto, which used to be the place you'd go and try and pass off used stuff. And Sam bought it off me. I think he paid me $380 or just under $400. It was enough to buy an airline ticket to get to the North Shore.
Good.
Yeah, it was good. And at that time, my brother and I both went. It's crazy. My parents had no idea what kind of waves we were going to surf, whatever, right?
That's crazy.
And they let us go. He was 16, I was 14. We had no parental supervision whatsoever. We stayed with this lifeguard guy, Joe Galanka. Tom Eberly had set it up. Eberly was one of the guys that glassed for Lightning Bolt. It was a family friend. Through Takayama, I met everybody, right? The entire surf industry. I knew everyone, and everyone kind of knew me. So Eberly set it up for us to go, and we went. It was like the Wild West, and I fell in love with Hawaii.
Truly,
I got there for a kid that read Surfer Magazine, and and North Shore winters were such a major staple of your subscription for the year, the North Shore issue or whatever. I got there, and then I was like, man, these girls over here, like all like hot hippie girls that are like half Asian, and
they can surf.
And they had this hoppa look that's unique to anywhere in the world. You don't have that mix, right? And in my generation, we're all parents, 60s parents that bailed and went over. And dude, the girls were, it was like, wow, this is crazy. And they were also friendly, and they surfed, and hence I ended up having 2 kids with one.
Right.
But she's the one that got me into jiu-jitsu. She took me
So the Danny Fuller story is not true.
No, I'll tell you the real story of what happened. It's very different from what people actually thought. So you got to remember, by the time Fuller and those guys all came over to the North Shore, I had already been there for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I had paid my dues really hard. I didn't get to stay in nice team houses, and, it was gnarly. Like that 1990 to 97 era was rough, dude. It was tough. There was no bike trail. Back then, Kainui was bushes. What happened on Kainui Road stayed on Kainui Road. You had to be really careful. Walking home was dangerous, like it was gnarly. And people could catch you, off like slipping real easily. So I kind of had a chip on my shoulder for the amount of shit that I had to take to get to survive at that point. And
you're a teenager at the time.
When all these kids came over from, Kauai, and they're staying in these team houses and all this shit, I kind of was like, you're fucking not paddling around me. You know what I mean? I've paid my dues. Neither one of us are Hawaiian. You know what I mean? I don't owe anyone anything. And so I think at some point Fuller was a little frustrated with the amount of waves I was catching. I was one of the only people that really rode a longboard out there, aside from Bonga and maybe a handful of other Hawaiian guys. So I had a target on my head. And I, at that time, I didn't have anywhere to stay that winter, and I was paying Strider $300 a week to sleep on Quicksilver's couch.
Was actually a lot of money then.
It was a lot of money then, but it was a pretty good deal when you're staying front row on the beach and you get surf pipeline.
Absolutely.
So I was kind of putting myself in an environment where I was able to be a target. And, it's a long-standing tradition to make the Groms shave their head.
Right.
And I was watching a surf movie, and Fuller jumped on my back, and those kids had trained jiu-jitsu, and they were trying to shave my head. And I fucking freaked out, and got out. But in the moment that he was on my back, I was so impressed with the control. I'd never had anyone hold me down like that. Sure. So I just kind of like put this thing in my head, but no one shaved my head, and no one beat me up. I did not get choked out. That never happened. But it sparked an interest, right?
Absolutely.
And then when I went home after that winter, my ex-wife and I were dicking around. She's like, let's go to jiu-jitsu. Because I had ran into my friend Mike Powers outside of Mitch's surf shop, and he was like, when are you going to come to jiu-jitsu? And so my ex-wife was like, let's go. And she'd actually trained a couple times. Her really good friend was boyfriends with this guy, Dimitri on Maui, who's a black belt. It's been doing it forever. And that's how I got into it. I mean, that's the real story.
Let the record be settled. That is the real story. I got stuff saying it happened at Malibu. Like all these stories come together that you pissed off Lance. I can't say his name.
Okano?
Yeah.
That's a dear friend.
That they wanted a Hawaiian champion and you beat him at Malibu, so he put the hurt on you.
That never happened either.
Okay. Well, good to know.
He wasn't the case. And Fuller and I are really close friends. I introduced him. I set him up on a blind date with his ex-wife, who he has 2 kids with.
There you go. So at the this surfboard show that they just had, Del Mar, there were guys in their 60s that had punched each other in the face, that were hugging each other. And it's all old stories. And the thing about surfing that troubles me, all the best stories are never told.
Of course not.
To protect people. Do you think it's the same in every industry?
I don't. I believe in telling the stories because they're all PG-13.
They are.
They're all like funny ass, great stories.
Yeah.
And dude, Donald socked all kinds of people that asked for it. Right. I grew up in that environment where like you acted dumb, you got socked for it or slapped or whatever. And you know, nothing changes someone's opinion of fucking up like getting slapped or getting punched. Right. So I was always a big fan of that kind of problem solving.
But with lawyers and stuff now, it has changed so much. Everybody having a camera. I mean, it's almost like...
There was a fight about to start at Pipeline a couple of years ago, and I was sitting watching it go down, and I interrupted both of them because I know their parents, and I know the parents are like working class guys that somehow were able to buy a house and whatever, and I said to both of them, I go, what angle does your lawyer want? Do you want the down the beach angle?
Absolutely.
Do you want the one on Jamie's house right here? Do you want the one over on the lifeguard tower?
No joke.
I go, because one of you guys is going to beat the other one up, and the loser's parents are going to call a lawyer with some bitch-ass behavior and try and sue you for teaching someone a lesson. I said, so both of you guys need to knock it off. Your mom and dad are going to freak out if you lose their house. And they both realized what I was saying was accurate.
That's great.
I broke it apart because it's like that era, you can't get away with it. Nowadays, everything's self-policed. No one had a camera back in the day, let alone a camera that was a video camera, right?
Yeah.
And no fights. The fights that I used to watch in Hawaii are legendary, right? No one got a camera out, right? And when it was done, both guys shook hands and gave each other a hug and called it quits, you know? And
speaking of which, since we're on the topic, this is a real question. This is a personal question. No one has ever asked me this. Bunker Spreckles, in his prime, apparently trained with some kung fu master in the islands. He was a master also with weapons, the nunchucka.
Yeah, but Jade carries those around.
Do you feel like you would have been able to beat Bunker Spreckles fully drugged up on nobody knows what kind of cocktail mix of uppers and downers could you have won?
So I will say this, because I've boxed for years, and I still do. Karate and a lot of these martial arts, like the belt purchase arts where you can buy your belts and different stuff. When you're a celebrity or you're someone that's really wealthy, you get special treatment. No one's really putting you through the ringer of really
not real sparring.
No, you're not stepping into like team practice night,
right?
Where some 12-year-old kid's lighting you up, you know? And I've been in that situation where you're like, well, this kid, how old are you? Did you just, what?
He learned how to throw hands when he was 4.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah. And given what I know about Bunker from Art Brewer, who was his photographer, and like what Herbie said to me about him and different people that, you know, had a different opinion.
He's a wealthy man.
Of him, yeah. I don't really think the dude knew how to fight.
All right, then it's settled.
And like I tell people all the time, like, if you're getting in a fight with somebody, the things that you got to look at that are really important are their ears, their nose, and the scarring area between under the eyes and above the eyebrow, right? Because it's a real telltale on what kind of a scrap. If the guy's got little short scars in the corners and up above, he's probably either played rugby, he boxed, he wrestled, right? Mm-hmm. Those are like, not that rugby is a martial art, but it's a tough-ass sport. And it means you're going to fight someone with endurance that's probably not going to quit and isn't going to be shy to a little pat on the neck or the, right? So you kind of got to be careful. If someone's nose is pushed sideways, maybe by coincidence it was an accident that happened to it, but normally if your nose looks like mine, it means you've boxed or done a lot.
See, I had no idea. Like the question always is, it's like, oh yeah, you can grapple. I didn't know you were. Yeah. That's a broken nose. I
broke my nose, I think 11 times.
Dang.
Yep. That's a deviated septum. If you're wondering what it looks like.
So as a martial artist, this was one of the questions people asked. How do you continue to train martial arts and still surf at 48 years old at the highest possible level?
It's addicting. I'm also really good at it. So I've put enough time in. I've been in it for 20-some years. I competed at the very highest level possible, and I had success in it. That's motivation to never quit.
How do you protect your joints, dude?
My joints are trashed. I've got destroyed shoulders. I've had knee surgery. I've knocked my teeth out. I broke my nose countless times. My back goes out all the time. But the only way to combat injury is to stay consistently active and keep training, never throw the towel in, right? The more that you keep going, the less that those injuries become an issue. You kind of just, there's a Matt Hughes saying, and I remember reading it one time, and he was like, when you have injuries, you don't take time off, you train through them. And I'm a big fan of that. You know, taking time off, it's like when you let a car sit, it doesn't fix itself.
Right.
Right? It gets worse. And so you just have to be consistent in getting circulation wherever that injury is. And remember, like, part of healing, it's going to hurt. There's no way is your rehab going to be this fairy tale shit where it doesn't hurt. Shit's going to hurt. And to get through injury, you got to get through the pain. So you have to have a pain tolerance. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But you see yourself wanting to surf and roll at 80 years old?
100%.
100%. Really?
Yeah, 100%. I know. Yeah, obviously, as you get older, your time frame to be tough is not forever. Mm-hmm. But that's not the goal, to be tough forever. It's to be consistent. And what I love about jiu-jitsu and surfing is you're always learning, even as you're, is it degressing? Is that the word for it? Even as your talent is going down, you're having to rethink about how the hell am I going to keep doing it as this thing's like, the lights are dimming. You know what I mean? And I got lucky at a young age. Like, dude, all my friends when I was 12 were 45 and 46. Right. I've had a real story laid out in front of me as to, like, this kind of lifestyle leads to this, and this kind of unhealthiness gets you to this. And I've also had some real sage advice given to me from guys. Like, I was telling someone last night at the Hall of Fame thing, I was telling Izzy this. I said, you know, your dad told me one time, he's like, look, Joel, this is Dorian Pasquitz. He's like, if you want to surf into your 80s, he goes, you have to knee paddle. And he goes, if you don't, it's over. And fuck, he was right. The only guys that are surfing in their 80s now are knee paddlers. Rusty Miller, Skip, all of them knee paddle because it's a form of yoga, right? It strengthens your lower back.
It's like child's pose.
100%. It strengthens your lower back because the pop-up is the one thing that I've noticed with all of the elderly crew is they deteriorate from it. You know, it degenerates. Your lumbar, your C5 and C6 your neck, everything fuses with all the amount of use over the time. So you have to be able to do push-ups, pull-ups, and God damn it, get to your knees and not complain about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? My back. Like, you've got to, it's work, right? Skip's conditioned because the dude's a stud. He walks with a planer. I don't know if anyone's held a skill planer and shaped a 12-foot board ever, but dude, that's gnarly.
It is. So the thing, again, this is just questions. We always wonder about, I don't know if you like the word athlete. You're a surfer. We'll just say you're a surfer. It's an athletic pursuit, but also, dude, it's part when you're a professional that you have an image, you're selling goods to people. I remember going into Vans in the mall and, like, seeing your stuff from Vans, like clothing, and being like, that's sick, and wanting to buy it. And I was like, why do I want to buy this? And I was like, dude, I like Joel Tudor. And it was actually sick stuff. But how aware are you of your image? Like, people wonder, are you joking sometimes? Because you have a sense of humor. You're saying things. You say how you feel. You say it how it is. Is it calculated, or are you like in that Mickey Dora space where it's like you play with us a little bit? You know? Well,
for one, I try to tell you, being the only longboarder, and I wasn't the only one, I was the only kid one in the 1980s that was successful, and into the beginning of the 90s, you had to grow thick skin, right? I am a huge smartass.
Right.
If you don't really know me, you might take it the wrong way, but if you actually physically know me, or you're one of my students that comes to the school, you get to know my sense of humor really quick. Yep. It's very dry. I make fun of myself. I also make fun of everybody else. It's just the way it is. We're in this time where everyone's become so sensitive. And I honestly feel like too much information via this, right, has made people less able to have a sense of humor, right?
Absolutely.
And they try and categorize it and pigeonhole you and stick you in these little, like, categories. And it's like, no, dude, this is just, I just have a sense of humor. I don't know what to tell you.
There's threads, 400 pages long, talking about you on the internet. Like, how do you deal with that shit? Like, or do you just not look?
Give a flying fuck, dude. Like, write that for all you guys that write in and he DM'd me and all that kind of stuff. And like I tell people all the time, like if you really don't like me, you can come to my gym and fight me. You know what I mean? Like I'm putting myself out there. My gym's open to the public.
How many takers have we had on that?
Never. No. Zero, none. Because I tell you, when you walk into my gym and you look around and you realize what kind of an environment it is and the people that are in there, you're going to get intimidated really quick.
I get some gorilla hands put on you.
It's a tough spot. I'm from Carlson Gracie. I don't know if you know much about our side of jiu-jitsu. We were these psycho ones. We all were the ones that went on to fight. We were the ones that really did some crazy shit. I'm from that side.
Yeah, the Thunder Thumbs Warriors are.
No, I graduated from a very crazy environment. I also came from one of the toughest gyms in America, and I had a target on my head being a pro surfer and being successful. The Brazilians went out of their way to fuck me up, and somehow my body type and the strength of being a swimmer and never wearing a leash and chasing my board and surfing pipeline, all these places. I also had confidence from surviving the North Shore, that I just didn't really care, right? I didn't give a fuck. And I got tough, dude. I was already a pretty tough kid, but jiu-jitsu turned me into an entirely different animal as far as self-confidence and really realizing that like if something had gone wrong, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's wild, dude. But like, I think I hear two things. I hear two things constantly about you. Why is that guy so mad? Or no, he's actually a cool guy. You got to meet him. So it's like, I'm like, just because a guy speaks his mind,
I'm not mad at all.
Be it.
I just call you on your bullshit, right? And people called me on mine my whole life, so I don't really take it personal. It is what it is, right? But we're just in such a sensitive time where people just don't have any courage anymore, and rather than just manning up and owning that you fucked up, I fuck up sometimes, and people say some shit to me, people that mean a lot to me, or my elders, or guys that I look up to, and then I go home and I rethink the situation, and I'm like, well, I guess I did fuck up.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I do want to know though, like, again, it seems like you've always been you, and you've been extremely influential in surfing, but did you ever have brands that are like, Joel, we'd like you to wear this or wear that, or maybe change your image or blah, blah, blah?
Well, as a kid, I wrote for this company called Oxbow. I was really young. I kind of had to do whatever they said. But by the time I was 18, I was pretty worldly, and my traveling, I'd kind of been everywhere.
Yeah.
I'd already competed on the ASP, and I think I had a different kind of outlook in things, and had been an awarded freedom that not most kids get to have, right?
Sure.
That sponsorship kind of came to a halt because I was kind of not a fuck up, because I was winning contests, so you can't really call me a fuck up, but in the like not caring about authority type of deal, I was sort of a fuck up. And I didn't blow it. I mean, because in reality, me getting split with them was maybe the best thing, because those guys had me wearing pink wetsuits and like, all this shit that I would have never necessarily worn myself, but I was aware that the money they were paying me was like more than my school teachers were making. The very teachers that kicked me out of school and made me go to the worst continuation school in San Diego County, I was making more money than them. So I bit my, I buckled up and was like, fuck it, I'll wear the pink ones.
Right. And there's a guy that you met during that time, Laird Hamilton, and like people have crazy thoughts on that guy. And as I've watched him over the years, I'm like, this dude just seems amazing. Like he did it his own way. That guy's awesome. Congratulations. Amazing. You didn't need the surf industry to get anywhere. You went out and made your own thing. Good for you, man. Created his own success. Laird is a very dear friend. He fucking beat the piss out of me when I was a kid. It's a big boy. Yeah, big man. Dead legs and noogies. I was a little shit, man, and I deserved it, right? Nowadays, that'd be considered like child abuse, right? Some parent would have like turned him in or whatever, but dude, I deserved it. I just saw Gary Elkerton in Indo, and I was like, how's his weight doing, by the way? He looked okay. Looking all right. Yeah, we were, he was a fucker to me too when I was a kid. Kong. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He rode for Oxbow. I wouldn't necessarily say he was the nicest to me, but it's like now that I'm older, I actually kind of appreciate the grommet abuse that they put me through. And I was like making a joke with him. I was like, you remember when we all went to the Barrier Reef and I fucking stole your tape? Because he'd been a dick to me for the whole time we were there. And on the last day,
he had this MC Solar cassette that was, MC Solar was like the biggest rap artist in France at the time. And he made this, he had his first major hit, and Kong brought the tape and he played it the whole, this cassette era, right? He played it the whole trip. And my way of getting even was to take that cassette, and him and Laird had gone fishing, and I was catching the ferry from the boat to Cairns or whatever it is to get home. So I took the tape and I drew a note with a middle finger and I stuck it to his cabin door and said, "Fuck you, I have your tape."
And you're a teenager.
I was a kid, I was 17. And so our boat's leaving and their boat's coming back. And I'm like telling the boat driver, "Dude, speed up, man. Come on, like speed up." And I see him like get off and he goes down in the cabin and I see him come back and he's like, "You little fuck you." He's like, "I'll get you." And then I see him, he tells Laird, people don't know this, Laird held a world record in speed sailing. He was one of the fastest flat water sailors, and Oxbow at that time had a sailboard team, and in the catalogs, you know, they were big on having they were actually probably the most diverse.
They were huge.
They were team. They had Formula One racers. They had snowboarders, dude, you name it. So Laird geared up. I had one set of dry clothes. Like my clothes were so stinky from being like a week out at sea, and he got on his sailboard, and of course he beat our boat. We're on this little dinghy. He must have lapped us like 5 times, sprayed us on every like go by, soaked the whole boat, and then he waited for me on the deck of the where the boat came in, took the tape back.
That's awesome.
Like lumped me up when he got in there.
I love
you know what I mean? Gave me a couple dead legs. Give me the fucking tape back. And he took the tape back, and then they went back. But Gary and I were reminiscing about it, you know.
That's fun.
And he was laughing. He was like, "Oh, mate, that was hilarious." He was like,
Yeah.
"I can't believe that was 30 years ago." Yeah, that's 30
Kong
years
and
ago.
Laird, like if you want to go down a rabbit hole of big men riding some big waves, doing some amazing carves, that's it. I do want to ask you though, I know you've been with Vans forever. Catch Surf comes to you with an open checkbook. They say, "We want to make a Joel Tudor foamy." Is there a number that you would...
So they did come to me one time.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. And I'll give you my reason why I don't do that stuff. I said no. I was polite.
Yeah.
Right? I obviously like, yeah, sounds good. Fuck yeah, we'll talk, whatever. I'm not going to be like, "Yeah, your shit sucks." Fuck that. Kook shit. I will entertain your conversation, but I just won't return the phone call. I won't call you back.
Right.
I had so much damage done to my own personal brand, and it got me in lawsuits and all kinds of other shit.
Talking about Kook Box?
No, when I did Surf Tech, you know, this was in the early 2000s.
Very early on.
And people have to understand, I was having a new kid. I just lost my sponsorship. OP had been sold and branded, and a huge portion of my paycheck went away. And I got a phone call one day from Dale Velzy and Donald together, right? I don't know how many people have ever had Dale Velzy call you, but that was kind of a normal thing in my childhood. Anytime there was a surf contest within 30 minutes of his house and I had a final going, he would get in his car and drive down and come and watch me surf.
That's really cool.
He was a very dear friend through Donald. He mentored Donald's whole career. They both had a special agreement with Surf Tech because they were of the first 5 people to endorse the brand. So they had this grandfathered in royalty that no one else got.
This is with Randy French at the time?
Yeah, it was like what they made compared to any other shaper was, and they offered it to me. They were just like, "Hey kid, they're giving away free money." And for their generation, it was like a dream because those guys had powered and shaped forever, and no one had ever really given them this opportunity to like, here's all the hard work, here's a free check. None of them had sponsorships like I had growing up with the clothing endorsements. And no close, not even close. So when they both called me, they kind of pressured me into it. And at the time, my Japanese distributor was like, "Bro, you're committing social suicide. You know what I mean? You don't understand." He's like, "All this hard work we've done to like build up a distribution." He's like, "Those fuckers are going to go after our accounts. They're going to give free product. And then those shops are going to be conditioned to think that we have to give them boards on terms, and they're not going to pay the deposits anymore." Do you understand where this is going?
100%. You got a new baby, dude.
So my Japanese distributor, my God rest his soul, Michiaki Ishida, he was just like, "Dude, you're killing me. Like, don't do this." And I did it. And it really did that. It like cut back on our regular production stuff for my crew that are here, for the Alex, Villalobos, and those kind of guys. It kind of cut back and slowed down work. It was my own greed, right? I tried to go after the easy buck, but what I didn't realize is in the bigger picture, it was fucking my crew at home. And after a couple of years, I called it quits because in reality, I really wasn't making that much money off of it. And it was doing more damage than good. So being the bigger person, I pulled the anchor and went back to making boards in the United States. We always made boards in the States, but I went back to just state production only. And if you want to get boards from me, you can pay for the shipping. I don't care. Right.
So is that really that experience? Is that where
that's why
your stance comes from today? And you'll go online. I'll see you going back and forth with shapers, with dudes. You're fine with your stance. Is it because of the people that manufacture the product here? You want it to stay stateside?
Well, you have to, because that whole ordeal, it made my distribution issue with my partner in Japan. We had a surf shop, California, was open for almost 26 years. So if anyone wants to talk to me about like, you don't know what you're talking about retail, fuck you. I owned a surf shop in Japan for 25 years. So you tell me about retail. You know what I mean? I know really a lot about it. And I watched the damage that I caused by me being a greedy little shit for just like a stupid royalty where I didn't have to do any work, as opposed to like, you know, there's some pride in being able to have your own factory and have your crew and know who the sander is and who the glosser is, and, you know, and having, you know, Christmas dinners and just the real shit. And Mitch and I ended up getting into a legal dispute over it. It was like, I didn't realize he had trademarked all my names.
How money gets involved.
I didn't know. I had no idea. And then when I looked into it, I'm like, what, did you own my name? How the fuck do you own my name?
Did you have an agent? Have you ever?
Hell no. I don't make enough money to give away 20%.
You've always been like, you're reading your own shit.
I'm also, well, I had a lawyer. I didn't need an agent. I had a lawyer. And my lawyer was dope. Guy could read all the verbiage of things that I didn't understand. Mm-hmm. I don't need a mouthpiece. Tosh has an agent because I don't need to be that dad. I'm not that guy. I don't want to get in the middle of his contracts. I just don't want to be that person. I'd rather him. It's a different era, different generation. He has an agent, and his agent's great. I keep myself away from it. Obviously, I give information and guidance on to the things I think he should do, but it's not my place to go in and negotiate for him.
Sure.
It also makes things a weird relationship with whatever brand he's working with. I don't want to be that super parent, right?
Yeah.
So I let someone else do it.
So I just want to touch on this, and I'm saying this just because I watched it with my own eyes, and it was crazy to watch. Tosh gets sponsored by Vans, and there's all people talking shit, like nepotism, all this stuff. And then within a year, all of a sudden I'm seeing this kid at like Pipe, and he's getting these huge tubes, and I'm like, what the hell happened? You saw all this footage of a kid who was a really good longboarder, could ride alternative craft, and then the dude's charging, and then I haven't heard a whisper. Nobody said shit. The past few years, everyone's like, kid's legit. Like, how did that jump happen? Or had it been happening, it just hadn't been shown?
Well, it was like with my career, it was always there. I was never a wimp, you know? I could ride any kind of wave.
Which I think pissed people off. Like, there are people making way more money than you that weren't.
Yeah, couldn't do it.
Yeah.
For sure. I grew up, you know, last night I got inducted into the San Diego Hall of Fame.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
That's a big honor.
Joe Roper did my introduction.
Very cool.
Being from San Diego, and I had a dad that gave me surf history, and I looked up to Butch Van Aertsdalen a lot, and I knew kind of his story in Hawaii, and then I had I don't want to make this story go on super long, but Joe Roper was glued to my wall. I had pictures of him forever, so I had this thing in my head that I wanted to follow the path of the generations before me. Butch went over there and fucking shots it up. Joe went over there in the 70s and 80s and kind of made a lasting impression on San Diego's representation on the North Shore, and I always wanted to follow that path. I got lucky because in San Diego we have a couple real waves. Blacks is real, Big Rock's real, right? Roper took me out to Big Rock for my first time in 1989 and kind of gifted me this, like, here's your opportunity to make it in some real surf. And so I always had that, like, black belt and ledgy waves. And like,
are you riding a thruster that first time you go?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And I rode tri-fins all throughout the 80s and 90s. I gave Tosh that same environment. We're lucky to have these waves where we're at, and they give you a booster of confidence when you actually finally get that opportunity to be in those kind of waves. I also had him at a Pipeline when he was a really young kid. You know, I know people now are like, oh, it's fucking irritating. You had your kid out there telling him which ones to go on, but I knew the reef really well, so I was able to be like, no, that one. No, go on that. Don't get yourself into go on that one. You know, and so he got green lighted in, and I just made it a staple of his surfing. It wasn't a surprise to me because I knew what I was doing to get him there. I'm doing the exact same thing with judo. It's no different. And I, you can't sugarcoat that shit. You can't like baby them. You've got to let them take their licks. You got to let them get held down. You've got to like let them get caught inside.
And like, are you putting flotation on this kid?
No, not at all.
So he's doing it the way you did it.
Yeah. I didn't wear a leash out of Pipeline for 30 years. 31 winters, I never wore a cord once. I only started doing it in the last couple of years because I almost drowned. I fucking almost drowned a couple of years back. And then honestly, there's so many kids out there now. I cannot have a loose board hit somebody and then I'm responsible for it.
No.
You know what I mean? It's one thing if it's 3 foot. If you get hit by a loose board when it's 3 foot, it's your fault. You know what I mean? Get out of the way. And fuck, things coming at you in slow motion. But when you're at a Pipeline, if your board goes flying out of the air on a 15-foot wave and there's a bunch of kids duck diving and you catch one of them.
So like how young was Tosh first time you paddled him out there?
I took him out there when he was 12.
Wow.
He kind of got smoked, dude.
That's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it was like kind of a windy evening, and I pushed him into one, and he missed it. And I turned around, I was like, "Oh God!" And he just got like blasted. And then, but I kept it like a consistent staple of having him out there. I never took him out on like giant days, but I took him out enough where it was real, and he just became comfortable with it, right?
Yeah. It's insane. Like he's been in the Pipe Masters now. But
then oddly, the role that Roper played in my life, JoJo has played in Tosh's. It's funny how it goes full cycle. Yeah, because JoJo kind of like, I was like an uncle to JoJo, right? He just made it to the Eddie Aikau.
Yeah, huge. JoJo Roper's an incredible big wave surfer. Good in all waves, but really a madman.
Incredible craftsman, can build a board from start to finish. Knows everything's dead.
And a real nice guy. Good dude.
Dope human being. Like one of the most solid people ever. But his comfort in Hawaii came, he stayed in my house. I'd give him the keys. Do you know what I mean? Let him stay in the winters. When I was at home being a dad to the kids, he was there keeping an eye on my house. And I kind of gave him the same hall pass that his dad gave me, right?
Yeah.
You kind of have to repay the favor. And then once Tosh got to be of age, all of a sudden the Skip McCulloughs and those guys kind of took over where I can't be the one constantly being the one telling him what to do. Those guys took over, and then they started to tell him.
Right.
And that's where he's at right now. He travels with those guys. And I told him early, make friends with the bodyboarders. They know where all the real waves are. Always be cool to the boogies because they hunt the ledges, the slabs.
Dude, over time, I feel like the boogies, it's all love at this point. They're so gnarly.
They're the gnarliest.
And like,
Jeff Hubbard is so
people
gnarly.
were so dumb when I was growing up, clowning, and then these guys were just pulling into sick bits. They're gnarly.
Oh yeah, they're great.
They're so gnarly.
They're great surfers. Mike Stewart's one of the most talented watermen on earth.
Absolutely.
So is Hubbard, and so's a whole. I'm friends with all the books. That early 90s era of Hawaii, I kind of was forced to sit on like Johnny Boy and those guys made me kind of sit to the west side of the peak. I wasn't really allowed to go to the outside.
Do you surf backdoor ever?
I've actually caught a handful of waves at backdoor. I did it one time during the HPAC. When the HPAC was an event back then, I got a sick one. I won a heat.
Nice.
No leash.
Yeah.
I got a crazy one down the beach. I know exactly which waves are good, but the line to catch the rights is way more intense than the line to catch the lefts as far as who's waiting, right? I mean, you could just list off all the guys that are waiting for the right. Lakua, Jamie, John Jones brothers. In my era, it was Johnny Boy, Sonny Garcia. Dane kind of had faded away by the time I started to make a place in that lineup. But the only thing that got me waves back then was I used to smuggle weed. I'd bring over like a couple ounces, and my friends had better weed than kind of what was available.
You were ahead of your time when it comes to marijuana.
Yeah, I would vacuum
Joel.
seal
I'll
it
give you
and
that.
stick it in my shorts, and I would bring over a couple ounces because it got me waves at Pipeline. It really did. And
I bet.
And the Johnny Boys and those guys, well, where's it at, Joel? Roll one, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be the first one to like, all right, here to take this, and we'd all smoke a joint, and then we'd go out, I'd get waves. So
that's amazing, dude.
Yeah.
I want to know, if you started a surf school, how would the Joel Tudor surf school look like? Would it be day one, have a seat, take a knee, we're going to talk etiquette? Like, what would be where would you start to teach somebody, like, this is what a surfer is, a surfer in your mind that is like complete, that knows the game? Like, I mean, obviously it takes forever to get good at surfing.
So this might sound weird. I would make you boogie board at first. I'd make you boogie board just so you get comfortable in the riding and getting thrashed.
Okay.
Right, just for the day. We'll just go out on a bodyboard and just let's catch some waves in the whitewater. The next day, I'm just going to be like, I'd be impressed if you can get to your feet, but I'd prefer if you could just get to your knees and just get up and just ride in and learn to keep the board stable. And then on the third day, I'd be amped to see you pop up. Then you kind of have an understanding, like you're gonna pay a price to be able to catch one. You're gonna have to be stable before you get to your feet. I watch people give surf lessons and I kind of laugh.
Yeah,
I'm just like, and half the time it's some fucking kook that's teaching another.
No, for real.
Kook,
so dude that moved here from Middle
like
America.
Very mid in his talent, and he's like just taking the guy's $150 and just making him a number goon. It's
true.
I actually taught a surf school one time. I also grew up around the Pasquets, and the Pasquets were legends.
Absolutely.
And in their way that they taught people, everything was very one-on-one. There was never taking out a group of 10. They worked individually with each person. They're legends. The way that they did things, people really need to study and learn from them. They were like the pioneers of it, right?
Yeah, I've learned a lot. One of the best books I've read, and it's written by Dorian Paskowitz. He signed it for me. He wrote all these really nice things. I'm fascinated with longevity, and I got a lot of work to go on that. I know I've listened to stuff. When you were a kid, you said you ate like a trash can.
Oh, dude.
So
out of control.
You became a vegetarian. Some pro surfers, Shane Haram, one of them, steered you in that direction.
Robbie Page, Shane Haram. Yeah.
So it wasn't like was it purely from a health standpoint where you're like, no, I'm meat, like gotta protect the animals?
Okay, so for the record, I eat meat again.
Okay.
I always ate fish.
Bow hunting's coming right around the corner.
Always ate fish because my dad and my brother are divers. My brother's a hardcore diver, and he'd shoot fish and we'd eat it. I never turned my back on that, even through the height of my thinking I was saving the world one veggie burger at a time. And then through my school, the kids from Santa Cruz Medicinal, Santa Cruz, how do you pronounce it? Paleo,
yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce it.
You got a CrossFit action, dude.
That guy's incredible.
Yeah.
Brian and that crew are just, for their age, they went to school, they're studied, you can't really argue with them. And they would just kind of be like, man, we eat fish, so what's the hang up? You know what I mean? Like technically, whatever has the least amount of ingredients in it, which meat's one of them, right? If you're buying real well, processed meat, not shit that's juiced up with hormones and different stuff, there's like, it's about as close as it gets to a clean source.
Yep.
And then what you garnish that meal with fruit, veggies, good water, juice, you're eating about as pure as it gets, right? It's
Absolutely.
Probably the most.
And your weight's like, are you pretty much what you weighed when you were 20?
Yeah, I weighed the same.
Same.
You got to understand, when I was saying earlier, all my friends were 40 years older than me. Dude, there was some tragic tales.
Oh, yeah.
Right in front of you.
Boozies.
It's why I don't really drink. I drink. People are like, oh, you're anti-alcohol. Bullshit. I have margaritas every now and then.
Dude, one of my favorite things I ever saw, and it was so random. I'm like, because I heard shit. There's a few things you've said over the years, like, man, alcohol will destroy you. If it goes too far, you also said 40 ain't shit. Like, you're still young when you're 40. I like carry that I think about it all the time. Is this right? If you're taking care of yourself. But I saw a video of you after you won the world title at 45, just with a White Claw in your hand. I was like, this has never been documented. Somebody make that a poster. I was like, he drinks White Claw? Well, it was awesome, dude.
Quinny came up, right? And Justin's a very dear friend, close and good old boy from
the guy
Florida.
just won a world title. Let him have a sip.
Such a stud. And he called me out. He's like, we're shotgunning a White Claw. And I just won. So what am I going to do? Say no, right?
No.
I can be a bitch and not try to partake in the party. So I shotgunned a White Claw. I could barely get the thing down, right? I know how toxic it is. Who cares? Like, he just won. Have a good time.
Speaking of that, dude, I'm sorry. I don't want to, the vegetarian stuff I want to come back to, but you said something, and I think you need to give yourself much more credit. You said the only reason you think you won the world title at 45 is because you're an old fuck and you just knew the wave better because you've been surfing it since 87. You really think that's...
Well, in that particular situation, yeah, because...
Tide was weird.
It was that time of the year, you get swells are doubled up, and Malibu's a real hard read if you don't know the wave. I've been surfing it my entire life. I think I've won more pro events there than anyone in history. I've won more pro events.
Backside,
which is really hard to do. I just had too much experience, right? And we're like that particular talent field that year didn't really have the experience. They had surfed it, but didn't know. And I was able to just kind of uncle all of them on which ones were good. And my waves were perfect from heat 1 to the end. So I had that knowledge. I don't necessarily think I surfed my best.
Right.
I'll be the first to say it. I've watched the footage. I was kind of mid in my performance for sure. But hey, dude, competition ain't about being like the best that day. It's about being consistent and shining when people are failing. And that day was my day to school them all on who knew it better.
How much, because obviously you're a competitive person. Have you always been wired that way?
Yeah. I was always pretty competitive.
Yeah.
Being the younger brother, you're always like
never formal sports, always just
no, nothing.
Nothing.
Never,
okay.
Just straight surf contest.
Yeah.
From a really young age, and being a prepubescent child that was very talented, competing against guys that were 30 and 40. You got some real hard knocks, tough love shit from the beginning that really made me tough.
Well, that dude, honestly, congratulations, because I think about this all the time. I talk about it with people. I think you and Kelly Slater, I can't think of two other in surfing that were in the spotlight at such a young age, and both of you have turned out like to be really solid human beings. Like, but there had to have been times when you were younger where you're like, this is crazy. Grown people walking up to you, want your autograph, all that stuff. Or did you dig it? Did you like it? Was it weird?
Herbie said something to me.
You're the second coming, Joel.
I don't know if you ever seen, there's a quote from Herb where it's like, when you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, no one fucking cares.
So it's true.
And so he was saying that to me. That was actually to me. And he was like, man up, get out there. And that was said to me. Because he was over, someone was trying to get me to do something, and I was being a prima donna and just being a little, and he was just like, dude, one day no one's going to care. I don't want to hear it. Get your shit, man up, and fucking appreciate that anyone appreciates what you do. So that kind of advice from guys that I looked up to a lot stayed with me forever. And I give my kids that same sage information.
It's good, man. Yeah, that's really good. I think humble pie it's great. You can sense it, and you can sense. It's weird, man. When you're talented, which you have been from a very young age, still are very talented. It's like there's this weird jealousy thing some people have, but like you got to meet the human, man. Like somebody said to me the other day, they go like, "Oh, you're buddies with Joel Tudor?" I go, "I've never met Joel in person. This is our first time today." And like you meet a person, and within the first 30 seconds, you're like, "All right." And what I see is a person who's passing on knowledge to a younger generation in a good way. And I think it's awesome, man. Like, don't stop.
Here's the thing. People are like, oh, that guy's a grump. He's a book.
Joel, that was actually a question. Can you ask Joel, why are you mad all the time?
I'm not mad. And here's the thing. Like, if you got sounded by me, if I fucking snapped on you, you fucked up.
Yeah.
It's not me. You fucked up. Right? Own it. You were a dickhead. You were paddling circles around everybody. You were new to the spot. You had no respect for the lineup or the people that were there before you.
Breach.
You did some stupid shit. You ran me over. You know what I mean? Like things you need to hear. You know, it's if you hit someone with your car, they have the right to pick it out and be like, "You just fucking hit me with your car." Right? Mm-hmm. You can say it without it. Don't take it personal. Own your bullshit. And I've been snapped on my whole life. I own it when I've done it. I just don't have any filter or remorse for telling someone how it is. And in this sensitive ass landscape that we live in, people read it the wrong way and take this he's a dick. I'm not a dick. I'm actually really funny.
Yeah, I think it's refreshing, dude. And honestly, like if Joel Tudor ever snapped at you, consider it awesome because you had an expert in a field who corrected you and learn from it and move on. Like if Joe Schmo's yelling you at your local break and he sucks, like that's whatever. But if he told you, it's probably correct. You probably did make a mistake. And if you own it, which means, you know what? You're right, dude. I'm sorry. Well, that goes a long way.
It goes a long way.
It does.
It doesn't, nothing personal. Man.
Drop the ego.
Yeah, just let it go. You fucked up. And if you heard it from me, then too bad, right? Get over. Don't let it ruin your life. But take it as a learning experience.
This does lead to another question, which is very important. We have, and thank you for addressing that. I've heard that many times amongst the San Diego land. Joel Tudor yelled at me. I'm like, I wish he would yell at me.
Yeah, you fucked
That'd be
up.
the best day of my life.
I'm not really sorry if I yelled at you. Just don't be a kook.
But there's some suspicion that you might be working for the Soviets this entire time. Why does Nat Young call you Boris?
All right. So I've told the story before. Aussies are pretty raw and their verbiage and how they talk, especially that generation.
Good sense of humor, too.
Yeah, just wildly inappropriate. I looked like a little girl, in that pink wetsuit era. It was quite common for people to mistake.
Were you the first Roxy girl, Joel?
No, but I dated one of the first Roxy girls.
You did. Yes, you did. Congratulations. Why not Reef Girls?
Yeah.
More of a ass man or a tit man? I mean, what's the
category of what was approachable? Right?
There you go.
I fit more in with the hippie girl community than with we were in Australia. We were surfing in the middle of nowhere. I had a pink wetsuit and a fucking wildly neon surfboard, and I was like down the beach. I think we were in Joanna, the kind of middle of nowhere, and it was just Nat, me, and these other two blokes, mate, and all the blokes, and the one was just blown away. He thought he had never seen a little girl surf like that, and
Joel used to have very long blonde hair.
Christian Fletcher was my hero. I would like to throw that out there. And the pink wetsuit thing came from Nathan had a pink wetsuit, and it was in ads for Town and Country. And the art director for Oxbow at the time was this woman, Isabel. And the Europe's always behind us on the trends, right? And she saw the pink wetsuit and figured like maybe it was perfect for you,
Joel. Perfect you, Joel.
Joel, you need pink wetsuit, so they make me pink wetsuit, and they were paying me enough. I wear the pink wetsuit.
There you go.
So I was in the suit, and these guys were having a bet. They were like, nah, mate, it's a chick. And so they passed on to Nat, and they're like, fucking hell, that girl's really good, and they're like, fuck, is it a chick? And Nat's like, your money's safe, mate. It's a girl, right? And so it turned into this, like, the one guy came down, he's like, mate, you're a chick, aren't you? And I'm like, what the fuck?
The first gender fluid surfer, way ahead of his time.
Then nowadays you get in huge trouble for what was going on.
Yes.
And it turned into this deal. I had to take my wetsuit down, like pull my top down. and the one guy's like,
I love tits.
He's like, I fucking told you it was a boy. And then Nat's chiming in on the side. He's like, bullshit, underdeveloped. He's like, that's a chick, mate. You got it. And like, so he called me Boris the Pink Clitoris.
Oh my God!
His kids grew up calling me Boris. Boris, Boris, yeah. And that was because Greg Knoll and that generation, they were pretty raw.
The best.
And the way that they talked and different things.
They all sound like my grandpa. Like every Thanksgiving, you're just like, oh, grandpa said it again.
Yeah, you're like, well, what did you just say?
What are you doing? Different generation.
They all got a kick out of it. And once Nat shared that story, it just stayed forever. That's why he still calls me Boris. Like if he calls me up and he's Boris there, it's never gone away. I'm almost 50 and I'm still getting called Boris.
Speaking of hippie girls that love surfing, I just want to set the record straight. I think you have done more for women surfing than a lot of people. There's a lot of chatter. There's a lot of things that people say. Duct tape. It's the first time that equal pay was distributed to female surfers.
At a WSL event.
At a WSL event.
Yes.
And was that your idea?
Yes.
There you go.
100%. I wasn't going to run an event. What happened was at the time, we didn't really have a budget. We're longboarding, so we're obviously it falls into the least important category on where funds are going to go in a budget for the year. But once the duct tapes are up and running and they're becoming successful, we had an opportunity. There's a disadvantage in strength and size and things for women versus men, right? You can't deny it. But in longboarding, we have some gals that are just ninjas as far as talent goes. Right. So since the very inception of the duct tape, I would always invite. I didn't have the money to have a girls division yet. It wasn't anything personal. I wasn't disrespecting anybody. I just didn't have the money. So rather than having their own division, I had to wait until we got to a point where we had those kind of finances to do it. I would always invite a girl, whether it be Kalia, Cassie, the ones that I knew could fuck the dudes up, given the opportunity, and I would put them in each event. And it kind of proved my point, because we had Cassie kick some dudes' asses. We had Kalia whip some dudes' asses. We made it like a staple thing with our event. Until we had a women's division, we always, in every contest, we had one girl invited to surf against the men. When we had thrown so many duct tapes, and we were like, all right, we got to put on a women's division. We didn't have the money to do both, so I gave them the time slot at the U.S. Open, because I figured, what a cool opportunity. The crowd's huge.
Right.
And I didn't discount the price purse. I gave them what I gave the men.
Love it.
Right? So that was the first time, and it was pretty rad, because it was before the WSL had made the announcement. I think it kind of kicked them in gear. They'll say, oh, we already had it in motion or whatever, but no, we kind of clowned them a little bit, and because at that event, the women's event that ran with the men's in conjunction was paid significantly less on the prize purse.
Yep.
Where we stepped up this tiny little longboard division and actually honored them equally and made sure that they got paid as equals.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So when it comes to longboarding, you are definitely a person who has many thoughts on how it should look. Am I incorrect in saying that, or do you?
So good thing you're asking, because I've been wanting to say this for a long time. So I don't want to be reoccurring all the 80s, but in the 80s, the longboard scene then and talent-wise is still supersedes today. Like Skip Fry was still competing. Donald was still competing. Nat was competing. David was competing. Reese Patterson was competing. The Pasquets were competing. Jay Riddle was competing. Herbie Fletcher was competing. I mean, the talent pool was wildly deeper than where we're at now. I had my idea of what good surfing was, and then everyone wrote everything. There were tri-fins, there were single fins, there was everything, but there was this aesthetic to it where I don't want to say tradition, just where an acknowledgement on the separation between short and long, what the dance was, right? And how they rode in a certain manner compared to wanting to mimic shortboarding. By 1991, Donald's crew were about where I'm at right now in age. And they had all kind of had it. They were just like, this shit's getting lame,
right.
And there was a new generation, and there was the Bud Tour was starting up and all this other stuff. And the majority of the people that were partaking in that were kind of like B-rate shortboard dudes who couldn't necessarily win they could make a final here and there or whatever, but they had competitive skills. They knew how to hustle and fuck you, with competitive knowledge from growing up in the NSSA and all this other shit. Where in longboarding, it's kind of a party. We don't really that's not really a thing.
Yeah.
When they got involved, there became this verbiage change to Nat Young's original rule set that was written in the 80s and lasted into the 90s. And they took the word traditional out and they added progression, and then they made this requirement on what the board parameters could be as far as like narrowness and all this other stuff. It kind of opened the door for this new generation of just really hard to watch. Like these guys were nose dodging. I don't know if you know what that means. Nose dodging is where your foot doesn't actually make it over the nose. You get like close, so it looks like you're kind of doing it.
And they'd win heats doing that.
These are winning world titles.
Yeah.
In shuffling, right? Like not actual cross-stepping and just like...
Oh, I know about the shuffle.
Like if you're diving, like you're like a diver in the Olympics and like the splash doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like it was like that kind of shit. Like in Olympic diving, the size of the splash is what determines, your form and all that shit. They threw it out the window. Like fuck the splash, doesn't matter. And that's kind of what was happening. I competed the whole time through all those changes and I won a ton of stuff. It was just for me being one of the only people that was active in that early era. It was heartbreaking to watch because I was watching this downhill. We were going up. We were now going down as far as like the talent. It was like sinking. And I was like the only young kid. And I was a little vocal on it. Like, this shit sucks, man. You guys are fucking embarrassing us. Like, you don't understand what was and what you've let it turn into. And then I just kind of fought it the whole time, the only one fighting it. And then I finally, after winning 2 world titles, I just threw the towel in because it was like I'd already won twice. I didn't really see that I needed to win anymore. And it was time, rather than just like continually like, give me one more round. I wanted to kind of build an opportunity for a different generation, right?
Yeah, and I think that the dance, or someone referred that longboarding in its purest sense, it's almost like ballet. It's so artistic with the nose riding and everything. I mean, that's what we see everywhere now in pictures and photographs, girls in beautiful locations, and that's what sells. Turns out you may have been right, Joel. Yeah. I'm not seeing a lot of people with rad pictures on their walls of some dude hitting the lip on a 9-0. Not zero.
Well, there were guys that were doing that back in the day, but they had really cool styles, man. And they didn't shuffle, and they knew how to actually get to the nose, and the Reese Pattersons, the Izzy Paskowitz, the Mike Downings. Most people don't even know who these people are. Man, they were insane to watch. Like, huge influences on my surfing. It was hard to watch it go from that and then to turn into this just sort of like B-rate shortboard shit with competitive knowledge.
Sure.
It was succeeding, and I hated it. And I was in a financial situation where I could talk shit. You know what I mean? I wasn't like a gazillionaire, but I was making enough money that I could actually vocally speak up, be like, no, this is kook shit. We're better than this. We can be better than this. And then I just made the Duct tape, right? Bands got to a point where they wanted to do it, and we did our own thing. It's still, to date, the most copied concept. There's still contests all over the world that took the outline of what we did, and they have their own version. Obviously, no one copied to a T, but they did it. And the Duct tapes have ran their course, right? We had 12 years, 24 events around the world. You can't run the same concert tour over and over and over again, playing the same goddamn song. It just gets old. So it ran its course. Now Quinny's running events. I think he's kind of found his calling. What's
it called?
He just had the loggerhead, and it was great. Good old boy, get down in Florida.
Right on.
He did really well. I could see Harrison kind of like slowly running events. It's a cool thing. It's a really neat experience to be behind the scenes and provide an environment where you're watching people that you respect prosper and
absolutely,
and be in a situation where they can buy a house, or they can, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like super cool.
And for the record, I would love to see Joel Tudor as the head of the WSL Longboard Tour. Devin Howard did a great job. Give this man the job. I want to see that. That's what the people want. Let's just put it out there. You said you would do it. Do you still feel that way?
Oh, I would do it. They're going to have to pay me.
Yeah.
I would do it in a heartbeat. I don't have any like negative feelings for the WSL. I just called them on their bullshit, right?
Yep.
I'm nothing personal, but if you're being a kook, like I said earlier, I'm your guy. I'll tell you, like, you're fucking up. And I did. And I kind of got like, thrown under the bus for just calling them on their bullshit. I mean, it's very, very telling. It's very in style for this generation to just like, oh yeah, you don't agree with what we're saying? You're canceled.
It's true.
And
stupid.
And that's really what they did. I mean, it didn't really matter to me. I don't give a shit. But yeah, that's how they work. I would definitely take the job. I could honestly give them some insight on the shortboard stuff too. I feel like they've kind of put themselves in this category where it's like really hard to watch, as far as for the average person who's not a high-level surfer. It's unrelatable, right?
Absolutely.
It's really unrelatable. They've kind of lost the plot on what waves are important, what's a big sell. Like, I remember when I was a kid, we gave our movie Adrift to Bud Brown, and Bud actually watched it and then called my friend Joe and was like, I don't know why you'd start with small waves. But that's kind of like, you know what I mean? He was like, he used the big waves because they're what the people want to see, Yeah. I was like, wow, it's really, Bud knew. Right?
Well, I mean, going back on movies, I cannot tell you how important video cassettes were. I was a moron that started on a shortboard, that stayed on the shortboard, and then the Seedling comes out, and it changed my entire world, me and my friends. I was part of that crew that was like, I don't understand this logs, longboarding, what's a fish? And then instantly, it was like you gave me permission and opened this entire world where I thought I was surfing better because the wide point was forward on the board. And I was flying down the line. I'm like, surfing's incredible. What was I doing with my life? And then it's just stayed that direction. Now we get to see like Bo Young or Harrison Roach, all these guys riding all this equipment, and credit to Thomas Campbell, but credit to you. I mean, Rob Machado was one of the guys doing a little of that too. It changed everything, in my opinion.
Well, Rob always rode a longboard. People don't really know that. He actually competed in some budget years back.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he would enter occasionally, do one, and smoke a bunch of people, you know.
Solid tennis player back in the day, apparently,
too. Talented. He could ride anything. I got lucky. Dude, Donald made twin fins all throughout the 80s, like through the early 80s, from the 70s through. He never really stopped producing them. So I had access to that, to eggs, to all these different boards. They were staples to what he built. You know, I wrote a twin fin in the 1997 Surfer Magazine tube riding event at Tavarua.
Yeah, insane.
I was whipping people's asses from round
Did you beat
one.
Bruce Irons?
No, but I beat Johnny Boy, and I beat Poncho Sullivan, and I beat kind of a lot of gnarly people.
Yeah.
And I did it on a twin fin fish.
That's right. I remember pictures of that. And people
and
were
then
tripping
I
on
rode
it.
a board, a 710. They invited me to ride a longboard because they knew I could ride a longboard at Pipeline. And Sam George wanted to like throw a wrench in the spokes of what was like, you know, considered what you would ride in those kind of serious ways. But I ended up riding, you know, a completely unpopular design at that time. And then I rode a board shaped in my garage by my brother in the final that looked like something Jerry Lopez would have rode. It kind of cemented my like, well, this guy can ride anything.
Right,
Put people in check of like, well, he's not just a longboarder. And that's why Surfer Magazine, I've always hold them dear to my heart, because they were the ones that really sort of, them accepting me and putting me in the magazine kind of gave me the credibility to get a real sponsor.
Dude, I have to ask, this is another weird rumor.
Yeah.
You get the cover of Surfer Magazine as a longboarder.
Yeah.
But in the background, who's there?
Yeah, so...
Is this a true story? Or
yeah,
not?
it's a true story.
It is, okay.
It sucked at that era because the advertisers, obviously, even today, they kind of control.
Sure.
Then they really controlled what was going on because the magazine didn't exist without their contribution. So, and longboarding was such taboo that, and there hadn't been a cover since Herbie's 1976. So it'd been like 20 years since a longboarder had graced the cover of Surfer Mag. And we got one. We got a cover. But, you know, back in the day, the magazines would give like a pre-show. They would mock up like 3 covers, and they would let different advertisers and people come in and weigh their opinion on what was like deemed appropriate. And I'm not gonna say the guy's name. He's fucking kisses my ass now, and it's like at the back of my mind, you go fuck yourself. Because the guy tries to be all buddy with me, and I'm just like, really, dude?
Joel Tudor has an ironclad memory.
You shot down my cover and made them take one of your team riders and superimpose him behind me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And put this stupid, why can't we all get along cover? Because Survey called me and he's like, Joel, you got the cover. Holy shit. You know, also, I ate mushrooms that day that the cover was taken. I like took shrooms and surfed for the entire day, and Survey came down and shot me. I did something I did as a kid a lot. I was always a big fan of kind of opening my mind and just enjoying and surfing for hours and taking in nature and whatever. And so I did. And we shot and we scored a cover. I'd already had the cover of the journal when I was 15. Mm-hmm. And I thought that I had cemented it, right? Like I got it. I got this cover. And then Survey called me back like a week later. He was like, dude, unfortunately, it's still a cover. He's like, but they kind of had to change it because this certain particular advertiser, and he told me who it was. He was like, through a shit fit. And so to make him happy, because he kind of threatened to pull his advertising if they had put that's what it was like.
Right.
He was like, are you going to put a longboard on the cover? Well, you can take my ad out.
Crazy.
So they took his team rider and superimposed him behind me.
So bizarre.
And it was one of the best-selling covers for that year. And then when they actually put the poster out on its own, it was the best-selling poster that they'd had in a decade.
Yep.
So, yeah. I mean, I was stoked to make the cover. The real story behind it, still today irks me a little.
It's a little
bit.
hanky,
Yeah, a little like, because people be like, oh, it's so cool. And I'm like, well, if you really knew what happened, it's really not that cool, but it was cool, you know?
Thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah,
one of the things that I just think is incredible, you got to be in New York City in a time that now people look back, the 90s, early 2000s, and you're running around that place. How did you end up like hanging in New York City so much?
Well, you know, Donald was in the business of, you know, making ends meet by different.
Copy that. Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
He did things a little wild west to get by. He obviously got busted, but his network of friends that were in that same mindset of how to make money. I ended up meeting a buddy who's a lot older than me, this guy, Tony Caramanico, who was buddies with Donald from back in the day. And he actually was the caretaker for Peter Baird and Cheryl Teague when Peter was married to Cheryl.
Crazy.
Like the whole Studio 540 era. I mean, Studio 540. Or Studio 54, sorry. Studio 540 was the old gym I worked at. They're close and you know, in name. By the time I was 16, I had traveled the world. I'd kind of been everywhere. And I took Tony surfing one time, Tony Caramanico, and I tell people this all the time. He's like, have you been to New York? And I said, no. And he goes, well, then you haven't been anywhere.
Yeah.
And he's like, you need to come see me. So for 2 years, he kind of like extended the invitation. And then I went when I was 18. And I didn't necessarily score waves, but I had a life-changing event. I heard jazz really for the first time. And it was in a really small audience, and it was Arvell Shaw, who was the bass player for Louis Armstrong, who recorded What a Wonderful World with him, and this guy Roland Kirk, who was on every major jazz, and then Ed Locke, who is one of the most famous jazz drummers. He played with Coleman Hawkins. You know, they played together, and it was crazy. It was like taking acid without taking acid. I just sat there, and it was just like it blew my mind. And this is right at that moment when I had just parted ways with Soxbow, and I was trying to figure out what my path was going to be and all this shit. And I heard jazz, and I was just like, it was fuel for the whole movement that I was about to start with riding old boards and making the focus be more traditional. So it kind of was like gasoline for the whole thing. It like fueled my whole existence. So New York had this like really influential moment for an 18-year-old kid. And then I kind of got to look at the landscape of what waves were there. I didn't necessarily get real waves, and I was like, holy shit, this place has got waves. I don't even want to say this in film because I don't.
Right.
It was kind of my own private Idaho for a long time.
I can imagine.
And I would go back there and score these waves, and just like nobody knew, you know.
So
I had it to myself.
rad.
And then because I was so connected to the weed community, I got connected to the weed community back there, and they were a hall pass to everything cool. Because at that time, delivery services in New York, who had the best weed?
Wait, you're telling me jazz and weed are connected?
Yeah,
Joel Tudor?
You know,
Whew, what? Breaking.
But
That's
I had a hall
amazing.
pass, dude. I could get in anywhere. You know what I mean? To pretty much any party, to any. And then when I was 19, I met this girl named Lisa Cooper, who was literally the queen of the city. She was a very famous stylist. She worked with every person you could think of. Between being connected to her and my friend Jack Luber, who was had some very famous parties going on, and he was kind of connected to that underworld that I was talking about before. Dude, it was like paradise, and nobody was there there were no surf brands there, no flagship stores that opened yet. It was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, that you're blessed that you got to experience that during that time. Yeah. And that's, dude, how many doors have been opened and how many parties have you gone to because you're a surfer? People are fascinated by surfing, dude.
Yeah. I mean, you know, Puffy's in trouble right now.
That's true. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I went to a couple of his parties, and I had a blast. Like, I don't know necessarily.
Who wouldn't have a blast? He was a big deal.
I don't see any of the shit that they're talking about, but I was like a little white kid in just the craziest environment.
And Joel left early. Let the record show.
Yeah.
If you're out there investigating, stop it now.
Well, Lisa and Cooper met at the opening of his club. He had Justin's was the name of it. I went to the opening night. My ass got in there somehow.
Yeah.
And the first night I smoked a blunt, like just like funny shit, you know, and I had a blast.
That's what I'm saying. You find yourself in these situations because everyone's like, oh yeah, this guy's.
And at that time I was smuggling, you know, ounces in my shorts back there too. And I had a connection to you know, my friend's dad at the time was connected to the Hells Angels, and he was part of bringing a lot of the quality marijuana over from Canada into the States. So I love telling this stuff. This is great. I love hearing I had a connection to really high quality smoke. And so when I would take this stuff back with me, you know, when you watch the cartoons when the scent catches the guy and he like floats away following it,
yeah.
That kind of would happen.
Okay.
And sometimes I would light up a joint and these guys would just be like, yo, where'd you get that? Like, and then it just opened like the floodgates of opportunity.
You're a trip, Joel. Like anything in your brain, like I'm going to get locked up because this is there's real time you would have served at that.
Oh, 100%. Dude, I took some major risks with what was smuggling in my bicycle shorts.
It's so wild. Dude.
But it opened the door for me. And to a lot of places, a lot of cultural stuff that most kids wouldn't be able to experience, you know?
But see that kind of thing, like hearing that, I'm like, okay, this is why this dude, like, I don't see that side of you, the mellow longboarder guy, but there's a reason you charge heavy waves, something inside of you, whether it was from birth or what, like that's gnarly. You like risk? You do.
Yeah. I mean, I went to RuPaul's birthday. I had Sting steal a joint from me one time. You know, like smoke joints with Woody Harrelson, fucking did Guru, you name it, you know, all kinds of people, Pete Rock, you know, like I went to every small hip hop show and saw.
You saw Wu-Tang coming up?
Yeah, like, I saw all those guys. I saw Wu-Tang, I saw Mobb Deep, I saw, dude, you name it. Lisa took me to all these parties and she knew every single one of them.
Right.
So I got to get in my little surfer.
Epic.
I was there. But, yo, you surf? Oh, it's cool. You know, like, yo, what's, you know, whoa, get up and like, you know, do like shit. It was great. I got a lot of culture at a young age. It's why my sense of humor is the way it is. I think people misread some of the things I say. I got gifted through surf to just be lucky to be in these places that most kids would never, especially under the age of 21, would be allowed.
With that, saying that, like, had you not grown up coastally, what do you think you'd be doing right now if you were? Hitting nails, for sure.
I come from an entire family of carpenters. I think if I hadn't had the success, also my dad wasn't the type who would just be like, oh, this is your third year, you haven't won anything? You're right. I started winning right off the bat. So my dad endorsed it and backed it. Otherwise, he would have just been like, put the tool belt on.
Right.
Suck it up. You know, join your uncles and everything.
So if somebody was going to be like, this guy's a stoner, he doesn't have a work ethic, what would you say to them?
Trade me for a day. Come in and see you.
Your hands in a lot of stuff.
2 classes at my gym for the day. Clean the toilets.
And you have a factory as well?
Surfboard factory. I just did construction work just recently.
Did you really?
And do some stuff for my parents. Yeah, I had to like repaint the house, do all the demolition and all the other shit. And it's like, yeah, it took the full day.
That's right, in Hawaii.
Yeah, I was sore, it hurt, but crab me a river. It ain't that hard.
Right.
So it's what it is. It's a mindset, right?
Yep.
If you have to do it, you have to do it. Big deal. I did it. I'm not impressed. You don't impress me. You know what I mean? Nothing special about what you're doing. There's nothing special about what I'm doing. But if you want to critique it, I dare you. Come on in, dude. I'll trade you a day of sending emails. See if you can last hours of getting your ass beat by people that are like conditioned athletes and they're trying to break your shit off, you know?
On that note, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu it's a beautiful, beautiful, incredible thing that you actually learn how to defend yourself. But when it comes to surfing, the general public has no idea how difficult it is. Have you ever felt like surfers don't get their due? Ball sports are making crazy amounts of money. All this. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's insanely difficult at the highest levels. A guy that can surf 2 foot waves or 1 foot and can surf 25 foot faces, that's insane to me.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends that are professional fighters. I think the big wave thing is kind of comparable in the sense of like, you really have to be kind of mentally out there to want to step into a ring and scrap, where the consequences could be you could walk out crippled, right?
They should be getting paid.
You up, slam you on your head, and that's that. Jiu-Jitsu is the same because at the highest level, we're allowed to pick you up, scoop you up on your head and slam you, you know?
Right.
the big wave stuff, you're constantly at a risk of you're going to drown. You know, you could get hit by your board and not come up. You could. So there's a parallel that's they're kind of mirrored, right? And the crazy that it takes to do the two. I have respect for football players. It's a very physical activity. They can get hurt, not necessarily to the same deal. Theirs is a lot more like damage over time from just the like running into each other but they can blow knees like we can blow knees, hurt shoulders, you know. But I just don't see them worrying about dying like we're worrying about dying.
That's what I'm saying.
Do you know what I mean?
Surfing.
Other than combat sports, striking, boxing, you know, surfing and the fight world are very, the paths are very similar in the risks that you're taking.
But both kind of underpaid, I think, still to
race car drivers, they're hardcore.
Race car drivers are gnarly.
You know, skateboarders are gnarly.
They are the gnarliest.
They're the gnarliest because they're just dude, you get so wrecked. And I skated, you know, kind of at a high level too. I had major sponsors. I'm still the only surfer ever that's had an ad for independent.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's pretty rad.
Yeah.
That's
and when you know the story on how it happened and why I got that ad, it wasn't that the photo's me riding a longboard down a hill, but it was because Thrasher at that time, Fausto, God rest his soul, was pissed at Sector 9's success because they had created their own market and were like succeeding. And nobody was like, well, no one thought that like longboard, skateboard, and these fucking cruisy sidewalk surf shit was going to take over and get as big as it did. So Fausto reached out to me because they had been sponsoring me since I was 13 through SMA and different stuff. And they were like, hey, Joel, we need you to help us get in on some of that lucrative.
You sold a lot of Sector 9s, buddy.
Yeah. Well, so technically I couldn't ride for Sector 9 until Fausto died.
Okay.
Because I had a deal with Think and I'd done the stuff with Indian and I was making a little bit of money, which is rare. Skateboarding, you don't really make anything. And I was actually making some money because Think was selling kind of a lot of my boards. And Fausto said to me, I don't know if the Sector 9 guys know this, but he was like, dude, if you take that money, he's like, you're dead to me. He was like, think about that.
You're dead to me.
Yeah, like full mob boss shit. You're dead to me. Don't talk to me ever again. And you know, Stesic had been a childhood friend since I was 12, so I was just like, well, I'm not cutting my feet off for that. So I didn't do it. When Fausto died, I called Craig and I'm like, what should I do? And he's like, what color is their money? And I'm like, green. He's like, fucking take it. And then he said to me, he goes, I'll do the artwork for it. You know, he's like, I need money too, right? Yeah. So then because Sector 9 had approached me since I was like 16. And I just, you know, then I made the partnership and it was great. They're close friends. I'm actually trying to work out something for Tosh with them now.
You should. By the way, one of the greatest things I've ever seen, your board model for Sector 9 that was a little bit shorter, that had the rolling tray that you could, innovative.
Oh yeah.
That was the best thing. Me and my friends lost our minds.
So Peter Hewitt from Anti-Heroes came up to me because Peter and I grew up together. We since elementary school. He was one of my biggest skateboard influences, and he came up to me. He's like, "How did we not think of that first?" I was like, "I don't know." I was like, "You guys have been rolling joints on your skateboards forever. How the fuck did you not have like the wind blow your weed away sometime?" And like, that's so we put the little cup. Actually, there was a high school surf team coach that showed up at Vans over that. And threw a shit fit.
Oh, it said he created it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Or was upset?
Was having a meltdown. Okay. They were endorsing me being an advocate for fucking marijuana.
Wow, yeah.
And the guy actually called my boss outside and grabbed him by the wrist and was like, you can't. And my boss was like, whoa, dude, don't touch me.
Oh, boy.
You know what I mean? Like, are you fucking kidding me? The guy had a meltdown. And I probably drinks beer. You know what I mean?
For sure. Like, absolutely. He probably was drunk when he showed up.
And does the whole deal. And it's like the hypocrisy from that particular mindset of that, like, you're the devil's lettuce, you're poisoning people. No, that's not the case. I'm a fully grown adult. And if I want to endorse, you know, an adult activity, which is no different than you having a sponsorship from Foster's,
right?
Or you know, White Claw or whatever it is, it's no different. It's no different. And if you think it's different, and you think there's like a huge difference to the two, you're fucking tripping.
Right.
It's the exact same. It's actually more damaging to drink, right? And that's always been my thing with weed. And I got to look at, like I was telling you, when your friends are 40 years older than you or whatever, and you're looking at these guys who have just deformed themselves. That's why that's why I've always been kind of against beer drinking. And I've even watched it with like guys that are in their 30s now that are pro servers. And it's like, bro, you look like Ozzy Osbourne. like when he was just Aussie and not with Seth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's like swollen and like, and it's crazy because it just deforms people's figures to such an extent as where like weed wasn't really the same. You know, like I was smoking joints with Jerry Lopez, who was like doing yoga and you know, like it was just a different kind of like my role models. All the creative artist types were all weed smokers. All of the insecure drinkers that snorted cocaine.
You do not sniff the coke, you only smoke.
Well, it's the truth.
Yeah, it is.
Weed is art inclined.
Very much.
Alcohol and cocaine is for the insecure.
I love that. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
It's
There's
true.
guys that need to feel I'm the man. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's why pills, booze, and blow go hand in hand. And that's why marijuana community are about like eat shrooms and getting out in nature and watching the trees breathe and, you know?
Again, though, I think like I agree with everything you're saying, but everyone's got different brain chemistry.
100%.
So look into your family history.
Yeah.
You know, and he's not wrong. Joel's right. I mean, there are safer things, and it does, man. Alcohol beats you up, dude.
Beat you up. So my girlfriend cannot be even in the presence of weed smoke. If she even gets like an ounce of it.
Your girlfriend?
Oh yeah, she cannot.
No way.
She cannot. Like if I blow smoke in the kitchen and she walks through it, she just like 10 minutes later look at her and she's like, I can't. And then she gets mad at me, right? Because she's super sensitive. So people's chemistry is totally different. I do not recommend it to everybody.
Yeah.
At all. Like that's you choose your poison. But just for me personally, I was just always into smoking weed because it like you're never going to make it to 2 a.m.
That's true.
Right? You're never gonna.
Are you?
You're not gonna make it that far. You're gonna fall asleep. You're gonna eat like some kind of cookies and fall asleep watching whatever it is that you're into.
Are you excited about where surfing is at and where it's headed? Like, are you hyped? I mean, obviously we've never had more options on boards. It's never been covered more with social media. People are still fascinated by it. You cannot take away the joy and the bliss of standing up on a wave. It simply hooks people from the get. Are you stoked on where it's going?
Yeah, it's the coolest activity you can do. It makes you aware of your natural surroundings and teaches you to be an environmentalist whether you want to be one or not, because nature's in your face and it's so, whoa, you're connected to it more than paying $300 to go sail down a mountain.
Absolutely.
Skis,
amen.
Right?
So
it's free and I guess hiking and those kind of things could do the same thing if you're not necessarily by the beach, just getting out and experiencing nature, whether it's like riding a mountain bike or taking long hikes or that kind of stuff. But the rush is not the same as to riding a piece of moving energy, something that can swallow you up and spit you out. There's nothing else on the planet that does that. And you can try and compare it to other things. I know people they get bummed when you try and say that's like the ultimate compared to something else, but it is. It doesn't. Nothing that you do is going to even compare to, like I said, getting just like being in the center of a barrel and having it just like.
I could not agree more. And again, any tube riding tips, or actually no, a friend asked me this, so I have to ask it. He said, I want you to ask Joel, because he's always been a proponent of you ride the equipment for what's in front of you that day. When do you ride a 2+1 versus a thruster versus a log? Like, what is what are you thinking when you roll up?
2+1s work when it gets about over shoulder high, because a log starts to kind of like, unless you're changing the outlines, it starts to get, you're handicapping yourself on what could be possible, and you don't want to blow that once in a lifetime wave by having the wrong board. Mm-hmm. Hey, now to combat that, you could ride anything. Nat used to tell me that you could ride a fucking door with a piece of wood attached, right? If you don't have anything else, if you don't have anything else, you could ride a piece of wood from the forest. In a lot of places in the world, that's like when I first went to Indo, you would see that at like HTs and shit. The kids would break down pieces of houses and they'd ride this little wave. You can ride whatever if you don't have certain things available to you. But if you're gifted and blessed enough to have the choice of what to ride, you, after about shoulder high, the big heavy single fin, you're fighting an uphill battle. You're tripping, unless you change the outlines. Then a 2+1 becomes like And I enjoyed my time riding them, but like I was saying, the rules and the things are changing. I just had to back away from giving these guys these training wheels to be spazzes, right? As far as like what Devin rides, like the eggs and all that kind of stuff, or mid-length, you want to call it, those kind of work in anything, right? That's like an answer for people that are really hung up and don't want to ride a long left. Fuck it, I can't ride a longboard. Those are a great tool for that in between, because you can still paddle it and you end up with this like ability to trim, and it feels very different from riding a conventional small board. Twin fins are like being on a skateboard. Like all of a sudden everything's just so free, and there's like speed that you never had before, and your board slides and you can kind of ride them in anything.
Absolutely. But would you still ever ride a thruster or a quad in anything today?
So given I have an ACL that's been rebuilt on my knee, I did it skateboarding, not jiu-jitsu. I cannot push on my back leg as hard as I want to. There's life before ACL surgery and life after. So you ask anybody that's had it and they can tell you what I'm talking about. I don't ever want to have to go through that again. It was the longest get to know yourself year of my life kind of deal. And I just don't push it to that point to where I feel the injury come back. When I ride a tri-fin, because you're just like trying to like push the board to its absolute fullest and like the most critical part of the wave, it puts me in a place where I'm like going to be limping for a month or two. It's life. I'm almost 50. It's the vinyl on the roof starts to wear over time. Right?
Final question: have you ever worn a suit and tie?
Yeah, plenty of funerals and weddings and.
Okay, well, all right.
Yeah.
I literally was coming here and I'm like, dude, of course this guy's been to a funeral or a wedding. So you've rocked the suit and tie.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I never went to my prom. I went to other schools' proms.
There you go.
And I know the outfit and the kit. I feel like those kind of monkey suits are really uncomfortable.
They indeed are.
And I feel like any work environment that makes you wear one of those, you might gain something financially from it, but the damage it's going to do to you mentally and having to conform like that might not be the best thing for your mental health over time.
You said something once and I heard it. You said you've kind of followed the fun. There's probably financial opportunities that you had that you may have not taken. Is this true or not true?
No, I have jumped on anything that would benefit me in the pursuit of being able to chase waves for my whole life. I've taken it, right? I've not turned down a whole lot. I mean, things maybe that I don't agree with, like the catch surf thing or whatever. But I am well aware of how fortunate to be able to call surfing a job. And if someone's offering and throwing you money to go and surf, fuck, dude, take advantage of it.
Amen. So, dude, I can't thank you enough for sitting down with me. Like, I think this interview was great. You are a good man. You've done a ton for surfing. Anybody that has met Joel will tell you he's a good soul and, man, just a wealth of knowledge, dude. Like, whatever stereotype people say about weed, you have, I don't know, it's not with you. Your memory and the shit you recall and the detail, it's freaking wild, dude, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I think we got stuck in this image that people think that we're all like Jeff Spicoli.
Yes, very much.
I have tons of friends that are like Jeff Spicoli. They were like Jeff Spicoli before the weed ever hit.
Yes.
I used it as a motivator, not something that hindered my performance. And like I said, I had it all laid out in front of me from watching these guys that were so much older and had like messed up, that I kind of chose the lesser of which one was going to be the most damaging over time.
Right.
And when you grow up smoking joints with Jerry Lopez and Herbie and all these guys that were still ripping when they were like in a later period, as opposed to those guys that were like a blob that were still drinking. And I just chose the path of like what was going to stay.
Well, as a testament to that, oldest world champion of all time, and correct me if I'm wrong, youngest at 15 to win an ASP event.
Yeah, I still hold the youngest and the oldest.
There you go.
Yeah.
So incredible, man. I think you're doing great things for surfing. Keep doing it. Guys, if you see Joel, what's the best way to approach you if we're fans?
Man, come up and say hi.
Say what's up.
Don't paddle around me.
There you go. You're the man, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Anything else you want to say? Shout out to Vans. They've been great.
Shout out to Vans. They've sponsored my crazy ass for almost 30 years. Steve Van Doren for taking a chance with me at a really young age. To Donald Takayama, who built my entire career. To Nat Young, that orchestrated my first paycheck. To Herbie Fletcher, who was the first person to ever send me something in the mail. As far as a sponsorship, I am forever indebted to you guys for believing in me. And now my kids get to benefit and hopefully follow the same path, right? So
absolutely. Amen. Thank you so much for your time. You can follow Joel on Instagram at Joel Jitsu, and it's one of the most entertaining pages, not only filled with historical surf information, but he does get wild in the comments, and I'm here for it.
And like I always said, you're always welcome to come by my school. If there's something I said that you don't like, come on through and let me know.
There you go. The gauntlet has been laid. Awesome. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Have a great day. Shaka.
Ow.